Welcome to the BOOMCLAP podcast where culture and conviction collide. I'm Rita Rogers.
And I'm Cecily Dickey.
All right, guys, we are back today. First time for the new year. So happy new year, everyone. We're excited to have on with us today, Allie Lundeen of Proverbs 31 Girl. We have had her on before. I just looked up before we got on, quickly. I'm like, what episode number was that? And it was episode 69.
Wow.
This is going to be in the 160s when this episode comes out.
So it might be 169. That would be wild.
Yeah. But we've had 100-some episodes in between, and it just seems like, I don't know, a few months ago that we had you on or something. It's just very interesting how time flies. Yes. But we're going to hop in here in a second, but I want to remind you guys, please go leave us a review if you haven't. We really appreciate that. 5-star review or a written review very much helps our podcast get pumped out to new listeners. So we appreciate that. And we had all kinds of great episodes last year. So please go back and listen. If you're a new listener, find some of those old ones. Send a new episode to a friend. We always appreciate our new listeners. I know so many of us are looking for ways to keep our families healthy while avoiding the doctor's office. And one of the ways that Cecily and I have both found to do this is homeopathy. We have both benefited from homeopathy and specifically Remedy Collective. They have been one of the ways that we have learned to care for our family. It's helped us not only with their remedies, but also the learning process. We each have their first aid kit, and in that first aid kit comes a guide with a list of problems that describes what remedy to use for what problem. It's been so helpful to have on hand. So if you guys are interested in learning more about homeopathy, but also having remedies to keep on hand for you and your family, go to remedycollective.com/BOOMCLAP podcast and use the code BOOMCLAP to save 10% on your order. Okay, Allie, let's talk to you. All right.
I'm really here, you guys. Yes. Thanks for having me back.
I'm so excited that you're here. It's so fun to have these episodes where we talk to somebody familiar that we talk to within DMs all the time on social media, and it just feels like a friend. It's just like a light, refreshing conversation where we can still go deep. So,
absolutely. I just wish we could all be together in the same room with our coffee.
Me too.
One day it'll happen.
Yes.
I'm going to apologize for my voice off the bat too. I'm sorry, guys. I sound bad. I know that, but
you sound husky, and people find that appealing. So.
There you go. It might sound better than normal. I'm not sure.
Anyway, just the season, right? For all these fun things that we have to deal with. But
yeah, absolutely.
Allie, for those that don't know you, which I think is few, because I think our audience is really cool. They have a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for? That's right. Overlap. Our audiences have a lot of overlap, but tell people who you are. Tell us a little bit about your family for those that might not know.
Yeah. So I'm Allie Lundeen. I started Proverbs 31 Girl, 10, 11 years ago now. Started with a blog and moved to Instagram. So we've created an online presence there, just sharing a lot of DIY. I love home decor and decorating. So it kind of started out with that. And then it morphed a lot into family and sharing our faith and also homeschooling and just the journey God has taken us on through the way. I think it's kind of been a window into our lives, and we just really feel called to testify what God is doing through the good and the bad. And I know last time I was on, I shared about our little daughter who died of a genetic disorder and my dad who passed away from COVID protocol. And so we just are very open to share everything because we know that, it's God gives us a story and we need to use it to glorify and honor him and testify of his goodness through it all. So it's been really fun, this journey, better than we could have ever imagined. We pulled Ryan home from a corporate job 3 years ago now. And so he's come on board, and we've really just tapped into family living and creating a really cool bond together that has been fun to explore the last few years.
Yeah. I mean, I love following you for all of those reasons. Like you said, you guys share the good and you share the bad, and all of it is super genuine. And what I love, one of the things I love is that a couple of your kids are a couple years older than mine. And your younger ones are kind of the same age as a couple of mine. And so it's really cool for me to see with Tate and Kinley, the relationship that you have with them now, the things that you're doing with them, and just how they really seem to love being around you and your husband. And it just looks fun. It looks fun to have these teenagers. And my mom had always told me, told all of us actually, that she loved the teenage years. She thought they were like the most fun. And I feel like I'm enjoying motherhood. Not that I haven't enjoyed all the stages, but I enjoy it more and more as they get older. And I love being able to watch you, who I feel like a lot of the things you do in your family are really quite similar to the way we do things in ours. And it just makes me excited for, like, my oldest is now 13, and to just go into these years that are coming.
Yay. Yeah. Teenagers get such a bad rap. And everyone's like, you're going to dread the teenage years. You're going to dread the teenage years. And I mean, I look at Cecily and I kind of want to go back to the baby years some days too. But I'm like, every season is so sweet. And we have yet to, I mean, ups and downs with that as well. But it's been so fun to evolve into the family with like little adults with us that we do love. We love to be together. So thank you for that.
Yeah. And one thing that you had put on Instagram recently about your kids and as they're getting older, and you're going to do a good job explaining this, and you know exactly what I'm talking about, was you made this reel talking about doing things differently and equipping them with like skills and mentorship to like kind of be launched really healthily into their life and into a business. So tell us about that, because that was something that I was just like, yes, one of the best things I've seen on Instagram this year.
Well, and I can't take credit for the audio, but it really resonated with us because it's something the Lord had been putting on our hearts. But I was a public school teacher for 3 years. So when we decided to homeschool, it was a major shift, a major mind shift. And honestly, we did it more for just convenience and wanting to keep, I couldn't send my baby off to someone else is what it came down to, because he was just so little. And I'm like, I'm just jealous of his time. So anyhow, I kept them home, but I think the last few years have just really opened a lot of our eyes to the education system and a lot of the corruption in the education system. And just the way we've been trained to think about education is so deeply rooted in us that it's been kind of this thing I've had to unpeel like an onion and figure out, why am I doing what I'm doing? And is that what is best for our kids? And I think that as we looked into that, it kind of was like, it was this whole mindset of, I don't think college is necessarily going to be the next step for our kids. I don't know if that's what, I don't want them to go just to go like I did. And then if they're not going to go to college, how can I or we as a family prepare them to enter into this world and to be, not only enter into it, but be successful? And I mean, the jobs that our kids already have had, they've just gotten accolades because they have really good work ethic and critical thinking skills. And so we saw that and we knew you don't need a degree. And, you know, obviously we know that, but the world tells you otherwise. And so it was one of those things where it's like, how can we come alongside of our kids and really be proud of what we're doing and who we're raising and not pass them off to someone else to do that, and still have them be super successful. So in that reel, something that stuck out to me that I actually had never thought before, it was saying a man leaves and cleaves his parents when he marries. And just like, what if this idea of pushing them out of the house when they're 18 isn't necessarily the best biblical model? What if we walk alongside them in those years when they have the freedom and the independence, and we grow them into a business, we figure out what their interests and passions are and what they love to do. And then we can walk alongside them to try to create a business with them and set them on a really great foundation that is hopefully debt-free and no indoctrination, you know, no outside voices. So yeah, it gets me really excited. And Tate's 16 and a half. I'm like, babe, we've really got to think this through and start doing this now. So that's kind of been our mind shift the last year, has been a big leap of, all right, let's figure out how we can set this into motion.
I feel like those teen years, like every year, it's like, oh, 13. And it's like 14, 15. Oh my gosh, it's coming so quick. The end of like when they're supposed to be, quote unquote, under your roof. And I don't know, that I think it's a really good way of thinking. It's been a couple months ago, the Apple News that flashes across your phone, it came up with an article that said something about the trades or the new millionaire class.
Yes.
And I'm like, because nobody's going into that. And all of these people are going into these things that you need degrees for, but don't necessarily pay anything. And I think a lot of America has gotten washed up in thinking that their kids need to have some title, but that's not necessarily fulfilling for their soul or their bank account, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think so this past year, Ryan and my oldest son they're working on building a vacation rental for us. And obviously my husband was in the trades. And so we are very much advocates for the trades. And myself loving DIY, I've seen what Ryan has been able to give me because we don't have to pay for it. My dad was an insurance salesman. He had to pay for everything. And guess what? My parents' house stayed identical to the day I was born to the day I left because it's expensive. And so when I realized, oh my goodness, knowing skills opens up a whole new world of opportunity. And also on top of it, it's such a huge benefit for your family because it saves you so much money. Ryan has really worked and mentored with Tate and all of our kids to teach them electrical, plumbing, HVAC, all of those things. And so this last year, as Tate's been learning how to build a house, those skills are going to benefit him for the rest of his life. And I'm so excited that Ryan could do that.
Yes.
And like you said, Rita, we've gotten bids from people. And I mean, the trades can pretty much, right at this point, call the shots because there's fewer and fewer of them. And it's a really good thing to go into.
Absolutely. I mean, so our oldest is 13 and we did a similar thing to you where you pulled your older kids out of CC this year, which is classical conversations for you guys. We actually have CC as well, but it stands for community connections. Like it's not the classical conversations. Okay. And I was really struggling with this decision. Like it just in me, and I'm not saying this for every family, I'm saying for our family, something about giving that one day didn't feel right for me anymore from the perspective of if I give that one full day to their community connections where they do their science and their socials and PE and all of that. First of all, those are subjects that I want to be kind of teaching them at home because that's where the worldview stuff comes in, right? Like I didn't want to just be teaching them math and English at home. Not that English doesn't have that too, but I wanted that stuff. And also with my oldest being 13 and only having 5 more years or whatever with him in school, I'm like, the vision I had for homeschooling has become, well, I guess the way to say it is I've had more courage to follow that every year because the vision honestly has always been the same, but I haven't always had the courage to follow the vision.
Yes.
And every year I gain a little bit more of that, right? And this year, this summer, I was like, it's coming down to the wire and now is the time. And like this year for him, we want him doing like job shadows and, opportunity to go out and do different things. And my husband is a public school teacher, so he can't really spend a whole lot of time job shadowing him. Like your son has that opportunity with Tate. But, on our farm, he has the opportunity to job shadow my husband when he's home. But those are the sorts of things we want to do. Like we want him going out with electricians. We want him going out and seeing all the trades and experiencing these things because these are the things that are so important to know. Like, sure, you could go to university one day if that's what you choose and you could get a degree and hopefully it launches you into an amazing career. But regardless, we want you to know these skills because everyone could use them.
Absolutely.
And I mean, I feel bad even saying this out loud because I don't want to like pigeonhole my kids into one thing, but I'd be thrilled if they didn't go to university and I'd be thrilled if they got into trades. And I'd be thrilled also, and this is controversial, I'd be thrilled if they got married young to someone amazing and had babies. Like just this morning and then I'll shut up for a while, but I was just this morning driving or running errands and my daughter was with me and she's got like this little baby doll right now. That's not even ours. My mom's letting her borrow it. I'm going to have to get her one of those dolls that Ruby has.
Yes, you do.
Anyway, so cute. But we were driving and she has this baby and she's just like loving on it and looking at the toes and the hands and talking about how sweet and cute it is. And I was like, Emmy, you're going to be such a good mom one day. Like you are just doting on this baby already. And it's the coolest thing to see. And she was like, oh, I really want to be a mom. And was just so excited for it. And same thing with the boys, like what you said with the leave and cleave. often my husband and I will be like, first of all, how are our kids ever going to afford to buy anything here to live? I'm like, but why do they have to leave right away? As long as they contribute and work and we're working as a unit still, I don't see why it has to be like, get out. I think it's, if the boys start pushing 30 and they're still not really making an effort to do anything, it's like, as long as there's this work ethic and they're contributing and working hard and have a goal, I think, I'm with you. I think that's all very exciting. And I can see why you get so excited by it.
Yeah, it is exciting. And I am all with you. I talk to my kids all the time. I said, hey, I would rather you get married young than you get married old. And I think that's the other, when people think their kids need to get out of the house, it's because they think they're going to be living in the basement till they're 30. And that's not the mentality we have. Like you said, it's to be a part of the family unit. And that's what's so important, is what we've learned is kids need that purpose. And so if they don't have that purpose in your family, then they aren't going to be successful. But if you can maintain that purpose, then why push them out the door? So I'm with you on that.
Yeah. And I just love that focus too on teaching them what really matters, right? Like from a biblical perspective and a spiritual perspective, like those things matter, but then also just what they need to know to be successful in life. Like today, something that I was really pondering while I was driving around was math. And I was thinking, if I could go back in time, again, see, the vision's always been the same in homeschool, but I didn't have the courage from the very beginning to follow it. I would tell anyone who's beginning to homeschool, don't bother getting a math curriculum until they have like their addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division facts just memorized. Like work on that. That's it. Work on that for a long time. So and then once they have that, they can learn anything else in math. But it's like, I wasted so much time doing 180 lessons a year with these kids and just plowing them through it. And I hated every second of it. And so did they. And I can't get that back because now my youngest is in grade 4 and like, it is what it is. But I mean, if my kids homeschool one day, or if many people are always asking, about starting homeschool. And this is the first thing I'm going to say to them. Don't get a math curriculum when your kids are young, unless you feel they're math prodigies. Because honestly, it's so pointless to just rush them through these things. And then they're not actually as prepared as people would think if they're on track with their curriculum, So I like that.
I know a lot of 18-year-olds who still don't know their times table.
Yeah.
So it is true. It's like you're so worried about just the benchmarks when they miss the meat of it. And so that's the mentality, though. Like you said, you have to be so intentional to maintain that mentality of what are we doing and why are we doing it? Yes. Otherwise, you just are check the benchmarks. And
that's stressful. It's stressful and it doesn't feel right. I don't know. What do you think, Rita?
I mean, that's just the way all of society has went with everything. Yeah. Whether it's medicine or school or anything, it's like all these check boxes to check off. And we're not ever looking at the person or the rationale for why we're doing anything. And that's a lot of the root of the problem of where we're at.
And with homeschooling, you guys had Andrew Pudwa, and then I will just, that podcast was so powerful this year for me when he broke it down, because I so respect him and his learning and he's amazing, but how he broke it down, and he's like, we've got the funnel backwards, like all the freedom starts at the play area, and then we go into really no freedom at all. And when he said, like, really, as kids get older in their teenagers, they should be driving their education and they should have all the freedom. And it was just like you said, it's like you get stuck with the benchmarks when in reality we miss the individual and their skill set and what they're passionate about. And by the time they figure that out, they're not under our care anymore, and they're kind of floundering on their own. So that was a really powerful conversation you guys had.
Oh, I love that one. It's actually one of our most popular episodes, I think, too.
Yeah, I've said to Cecily recently, we should have him on every fall, like right before school starts, just give all the moms a pep talk. We should just schedule him out.
Yeah. To remember why you're doing this, how you want to do this. Absolutely. Yeah. He's so great. And I just love his Instagram videos that he puts up too, where he just like decides to sit down and say something to the camera, something that's been on his mind. I love following him for that reason. Yeah. But let's talk since we've been talking about school and kids and education and different ways of doing things, and I love that funnel example that you just reminded me of. I just think that makes so much sense. Let's shift into talking about social media and phones for kids. Tell us what you've decided for your family.
So we actually made this decision when they were probably 6 years old, and Ryan and I said, we are not going to give our kids iPhones, and we aren't going to allow them to have social media. And when we made that decision, it was pretty easy. It was pretty easy when they were 6 to make that decision. Now they're 15 and 16. And what is interesting is we made that decision, like you said, Cecily, with the exact same conviction of the why behind it is still the same as it is today. Mm-hmm. But if you don't go back to that main conviction, it's very easy to lose the why behind it. And I will say when we made that decision, we made it with a really big group of other parents that were making the same decision. And I think what has been the hardest is you've watched those parents trickle off, and you kind of feel like a standing island, and it's really hard. And I know the kids feel like it's hard, but as parents, it's really hard too, because you're like, I thought we had this club. I thought we were in this together. Yeah. And turns out a lot of those parents have, chosen a different route. And so I think that, so we did choose to do the no social media and no iPhones, and we are still successful in that. They still don't have them. And, not to say that it was always easy. There was definitely a couple months that they, begged and pleaded and cried, and they're probably listening upstairs and are like, what are you saying? Where it was really hard, and where we just had to acknowledge how hard it was for them, because all of these friends that we thought were in the same boat were getting social media and iPhones, and it didn't seem fair. But going back to, it's hard for us too, you guys. But let's go to the why of we're doing this. We really want to protect you. And you know what? Show me any evidence or show me any data that proves that this is healthy for you and good for your brain, and it's going to benefit you. If you can, give us some valid points and some good evidence, like, we'll hear you out. But it's been a long journey, but I have to tell you, it's been one that has been so rewarding if you can stick with it. And I think that's what in the reel we said we saw this transformation. And what was interesting is our kids saw their friends start to get it, and they visually saw the shift in behavior. And all of a sudden, my daughter is riding to camp, and she's like, my friends were scrolling on their phones the whole time, the whole ride, Mom. They didn't look at me or talk to me. And I mean, it's heartbreaking as a parent, right? And it's also heartbreaking that other parents don't understand what it's doing to kids with the isolation, and also just, it's just rude. And that's what I tell the kids. I'm like, that's just rude behavior. Like, we've stopped learning how to be good friends. We've stopped learning how to be good humans, because we're putting a device before our friends and before people. And so they saw that, and it actually validated all the points we were making. And even though it was still hard, it wasn't like, there's times where I think they say thank you. They more so wanted to be like, can you please talk to their parents and tell their parents not to let them have it? I'm like, honey, I wish I could do that, but their parents know, and their parents have made this decision. And so we can only do what we call do to in our house, and hope that it spreads, and hope that they see something different, But it was eye-opening when they saw it with their own two eyes, the shift that it made in their friends. And I don't know, I just feel like I got to keep my family. I hear so many parents that say, I don't really know who my kids are. They don't tell me anything. They're in their rooms all night. And I am like, I'm so sad for you. That makes me really sad, because you lose the family unit, when you allow all these outside voices into your kids' pockets and hands at all times. So,
So do your kids have any phone, or just not an iPhone?
Just not an iPhone.
Okay.
We started with the Gab phone, and then we moved to the TrueMe phone. And I will say, and this is another controversial thing, I appreciate the TrueMe and the Gab phone. The TrueMe phone's a little easier because all of the texts that are coming into the phone, I can read and see. And some parents think that that's an invasion of privacy. But I will tell you, technology is just so different than when we had it. And there can be group texts or, girls are very different, like texting that comes in that's very unhealthy. And I think to just flag that right away. And even as a boundary for our kids, like they tell their friends, hey, my mom can read anything that you send. It's like putting a boundary there for them that they don't have to put up themselves, because it's hard to do that when you're 13, 14, 15. So I personally, and I don't know, I've asked them, they say they're fine with it. They say that they don't mind that I can read. And I maybe check it once a week, once every other week, just to make sure at this point. But when they first got the phones, there was definitely some things that we need to step in and say, hey guys, guess what? This is Tate's mom. I'm reading this. This is not appropriate, and
everyone just ooh, has a freak out.
Oh yeah. And you know what though? It stops them in a jiffy. Yeah. It's that safeguard there that you set for their friends. And we don't have dial-up phones anymore. It used to be that, and you didn't text. People are very bold in what they text. And so it is a different world, and there do need to be different safeguards. And so I think that that's been a really positive thing, that we can also train them in what that looks like, even with etiquette on a phone and appropriate behavior on a phone. So
for sure.
Yeah, I'm glad I clarified that, because I've been kind of going back and forth. We have a Gab phone that's activated for my kids to use, like if they go somewhere on a trip or something, or if they're babysitting or whatever. But I haven't just let them, it's kind of like the community phone for my girls.
Sure.
I haven't just let them have it to like text with friends. And, my older one's kind of like, why can't I text with my friends? And I'm like, there's nothing against it, but at the same time, like, I just don't want you just texting all the time. And I would like you to have conversations with people. And I know that's not the way of the world and we can't go back, but like nobody's going to call you. And because she doesn't have that though, like she is kind of left out sometimes. So I'm like, I'm still finding that right balance as a mother, like what to do.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I will say that is the hardest part, because they do get left out. And everyone says, well, it's easier for you because you homeschool, but the homeschool ring is still very much in the public world. And so it's not 100% different. And there was a time where I felt so bad, like if my kids didn't have many friends because they were getting left out, that I would try to push friendships. And all of a sudden I was like, what am I doing? Like they are 100% okay to be with family. I will say my 15-year-old and my 8-year-old girls are best friends, and
so
Tate
sweet.
and Beckett are best friends. And you know what? I'm okay with that, because these are the relationships that are going to last a lifetime. And that's what we tell them. I said, I am not in contact with any of my high school friends, and everyone in high school thinks there's something really awesome. And you find out 2 years after graduation, so it's like we put all this pressure on our kids have to have friends. And it's like, at what expense?
Absolutely.
So I think I had to get over that too, Rita, where it's like, if that just means that they're tapping more into their family, I'm okay with that.
Yes, but like, that's my thing. Like, I kind of was struggling with that maybe a year ago. It was kind of bothering me. And just recently in the last year, I've kind of like gotten to the point that you're at, where I'm like, okay, she has a sister and she has a brother now, and they're going to be friends and they're going to have these relationships. And it's something that I've just had to realize, that we've normalized like having tighter relationships through these like 4 years of high school with people outside the home. And then, I still talk to some of my high school friends. There's a group of girls that we have a group text every once in a while. We judge livestock together, and it's great. But we don't text more than like once a month, and we're not super close. And it's nice to have like those relationships still, but it's not like the relationship should be with my siblings, Yes. And so I don't know. I think that we've done a lot of things backwards, and then we didn't really realize they were backwards. And now we kind of have to like, I don't know, just
it is a retraining of the cultural brain mindset. Yes. It's so interesting. And I think sometimes I feel like I'm so like set apart from the cultural matrix. And then I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm not. Like it's intentionally rewiring. that thought process.
It really is rewiring. I don't know. Like I grew up, our family was always really tight. Like there was 4 and then 5 of us when we kind of adopted. It wasn't like legal adoption. It's always, I don't try to explain it because it was a weird little situation, but when this girl was 14, she moved in with us. And so there was 4 and then there was 5 of us. And we were always really close. Like my favorite place was to be home with my family, just having a good time. And I had friends, like I had a really close group of great girls that I was friends with, elementary school, high school. And I remember I don't remember much. I have a terrible memory, but I remember once driving home from volleyball practice and the mom said to all of us, you girls are going to be friends forever. You have such a special friendship. And I even then was like, I'm not sure about that. And not that I wouldn't be friends with any of them. I would, I'm sure. It's just, they've moved all over the country or just have totally pursued different things in life. And I can't remember the last time I talked to any of them. Yeah. Like I am not one of those people that has any connection with anyone I really went to high school with anymore. And I'm perfectly fine with it. And Rita's at this moment probably thinking that's a bit of a personality thing because I don't need a whole lot of attachments in my life. And she knows that about me, but I don't know. And then going back to the phone thing and childhood, when I think of my childhood, I can't imagine if it was tied to technology in any way. Like there was so much freedom with just being able to have this analog life. And I don't know who it is that has the quote, but it's like once you give a kid a phone, say goodbye to their childhood. Yeah. And I really think that's true because I mean, when we go to my husband's school where he teaches in the high school a few times a week for sports or whatever, and just seeing all of these kids just totally locked in. This is the way they're connected to each other. Their heads are down. It's just so widespread. And they even have a rule in the school now that you're not supposed to take your phone in class. But they're all so addicted to it that it's become this major issue that is just raging throughout the school. And I'm like, it's really sad because in trying to give these kids something, this point of connection, quote unquote, they've had something removed from them. And the thing that's been removed is so much more important than the thing that they supposedly gained. And
it's a high price to pay. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, we can't go back in time. And this is the world now. But we only have these limited amount of years where we get to protect the childhood that they have. And I think that's really worthwhile.
Yeah. And that's why we made the reel. And I mean, my kids, before I post a reel, they see it. I'm like, are you guys okay with this? And they watch my stories every day on my phone. And I mean, they know how Instagram, this is the other thing. People think my kids don't know technology because I don't give them social media. And it's so funny to me, but I'm like, they know all of technology. But anyhow, the reason we posted it is because nothing will ever change unless parents start to make it a priority and put their foot down. And so this reel was not for kids. This reel was 100% for parents to just try to get a different view of what you said, the trade-off. Like, yes, you don't want to fight that battle in the short term, but you're looking at a lifetime of an uphill battle with your kids because you're going to lose the connection and you're going to lose the influence you have over their lives. And I think that that's something that really stuck out to me that I read, that we have such an epidemic of kids doing their own thing and going their own ways because their parents have lost the influence to friends and to other Hollywood celebrities or, whatever is taking them over on their phones, where we never had that. I mean, we had to watch the TV, or we didn't have a voice in our pockets 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So parents have to fight 20 times as hard to gain influence in their kids' lives when they have to deal with a cell phone that's constantly speaking to them. And so that's where, my heart is to just encourage the parents and to say it's hard, but it's so worth it. And if we could all just band together, and there could be a bigger group, and I know it's never going to be 100%, and I really am praying like the generation under us sees, because we didn't grow up with it. So we all, like, there's so many of my, friends that just don't understand 100% what it's doing to their kids. I don't even think a lot of people understand how social media works in that and targeting children. And so it's like the generation under us that grew up with it. That's my prayer, is that they realize how hard it was and that they are the ones that maybe put down the hard boundaries for their kids. And I don't know, Rita, like you said, like this is the culture we're in. Maybe it's just like an unstoppable thing, but I don't know. I just pray that we get back to the roots and the basics of childhood. It would be wonderful.
Oh, I don't think it's an unstoppable thing. I think technology itself is unstoppable, but I don't think how we handle it is unstoppable. You know, I think we can ultimately be the ones that guide how we interact with it. But it's going to take guts and it's going to take some self-control, because I mean, the things that are getting put out to us make life, quote, easier, you know, in all the ways that I'm not sure how I want to say this, but it doesn't ultimately make life easier. It makes life easier in the short term. And so it's going to take massive self-control, especially as things progress with AI and everything. But I was thinking as you were speaking about an episode we did with Echo Unafraid. We talked about social media and kids. And then we did an episode with Joey Odom from Arrow. And he mentioned this will be the first generation. Like if we don't do something about this and step in, this will be the first generation of kids who grows up watching more of other people's memories than having and making memories of their own. And I'm like, oh, that is so incredibly heartbreaking. But we're the ones that stand between that, you know?
Yeah. And
because these kids aren't going out and buying themselves phones and activating phones. We're putting them in their hands. Yeah.
It's kind of mind-boggling to me, and that's what we recently just had a little family reset and family meeting. And that's what we told the kids. We said, you know, we want you to know the easy thing is to give you guys all phones and let you go on your way. And guess what? Then we can be on our phones and we can scroll and do our own thing. And I said, the easy thing is not checking all the devices and making sure that you're looking at things that are appropriate and checking in and, you know, taking away privileges if you're not. Like the easy thing is to live in a world where we can believe that you guys are always making the right decisions, where you're always doing the best thing, where we never lose your trust, where we always, you know, can brag on our kids. And the reality is that is never beneficial. It's not beneficial to you. It's not beneficial to us, but it's easy. So that was just like, we don't do this because it's easy, you guys. We're doing this. It's hard, but we're doing this because we think it's best for you and for your long-term health.
Yeah. I think like too, as adults, like grown adults that are going to be subject to what the next generation comes up and acts like when they're adults, you know, as we get older, I find it interesting. And maybe I've talked about this before on the podcast. I don't know. Sorry if I'm repetitive, but like, I find it so interesting that like, the older generations complain about how kids are. And I'm like, well, who made the kids into what they are? Like you guys did, you know, as I'm sitting in church and like watching people hand the kids like a cell phone to watch so they're quiet during church. And I'm like, I know that's the easier thing to do. And I'm not like demeaning anyone for doing that because I know that's just kind of the thing that happens like without even thinking about it. But like, this is something we've purposely not done to our kids because no, it's not easy. But then when we go to a restaurant, when they're like 5 or 6 and people are like, man, your kids were so well behaved.
Yes.
I'm like, yeah, because we've never put a cell phone in their hand to just sit there and like mind numb them. Yeah. So anyway, I don't know. This is just.
But you're right, Allie. You had said earlier, it takes guts, or maybe that was Rita. I can't remember who said it. Someone said it takes guts. And it's true because just a couple scenarios that have happened somewhat recently to me. One, I was checking in about this family that I know who recently started going to like a program. And I just don't want to be too specific. And I had asked this person that's there with them, like, oh, how are they doing? And these kids are homeschooled. And I'm like, how are they doing there? And he's like, great kids. The only thing is, you know, they don't really know like movie references and this and that. And I was just like, oh, does it matter? Like, anyway, it was just so interesting. And then another one, this one happened to me, but someone had wanted to give my kids like handheld video games, which I don't have a problem with handheld video games. I just don't want them in my house. But again, I don't have a problem with my kids playing them on occasion or whatever. I just don't want them to have them. And so my husband and I both talked about it. And then we said no together. Like we just didn't think it was a great idea. And then this person said to us, well, if you're not going to send those kids to school, then you've got to let them do stuff like this, or they're going to have no idea what their peers are doing. I was just like, oh, but is this what matters? Is the video game what
their
matters?
peers are also doing this, and this. So
it's mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling to me, the thinking behind that.
Wow.
Yes, it was pretty intense. It was a pretty intense moment. And I think I blacked out after that comment. Like I can't even remember how I responded. I just kind of blacked out. And it's fine. But it's just, like we're pretty, like we'll let our kids watch a lot of movies and stuff with us that other people would be like, oh, I can't believe you let them watch that and stuff. But we watch it with them. And so like, they're not living in the dark. They're not sheltered from anything hugely. They're protected from things. They're not sheltered, but it's just really interesting that people expect kids to have this certain amount of pop culture understanding. And I don't even know if pop culture is the right word, but it's just none of these things actually matter at all. They don't actually matter. So I'm more interested in protecting what matters.
I think I've told you this before, Cecily, but do you know how many times like somebody will say something and like a movie reference will like pop in my head, like a movie quote or like a song, like lyrics from a song, and it's not always like good. And I'm just like, oh, like I wouldn't have, and I know it's kind of funny and like my personality is a little bit funny. Like people here might not know this, but like I'm actually kind of a funny person.
The memes and the gifts I get are great.
I'm not always serious. But anyway, my whole point is like, I kind of wish sometimes like I hadn't been exposed to those things because like, then I might think something different when I hear whatever, and it would be something that's, I don't know, just more wholesome, I guess, or not stupid. Like sometimes just stupid.
That's what my husband is always knows the stupid humor quotes, the movie quotes. And he's like, all the stupid humor has stuck in my brain. And that's what he goes, the stupid stuff sticks. And the really important stuff, like getting memory verses to stick is just not as like, he's like, so
this
anyways, that's
reminds me.
It's not all bad, but no, I don't know. I just think about it
too. Yeah. So,
Oh yeah. This just reminds me of a funny anecdote from really early in our podcasting years, just thinking of how this funny and stupid stuff sticks in our heads.
I know what you're going to say.
So I can't remember what episode it was, but we were talking about something and Rita should have said the word strategy. But she said strategery because it was from Saturday Night Live like a long time ago.
Like a George Bush Saturday Night Live clip. That's hilarious.
And I said to her, I'm like, I think you mean strategy. And she's like, no, I mean strategery. And this memory will forever live with me as one of my favorites ever because she was so sure that it was that word. Because that's what was in her mind.
Didn't I find that they like made it a word after that?
Yes, I think it was in the dictionary or something.
So funny.
So you were right. Ultimately, you were right.
That's hilarious.
Anyway, that's funny.
According to new definitions, I was right.
Yes. Cracks me up.
We're in the heart of winter, and everyone's looking for different ways to support their immune system. RoweCasaOrganics.com has many items that fit the bill, and you can use the code BOOMCLAP to save 20% on your order. One of the first items on your list when you go to RoweCasaOrganics.com should be their elderberry syrup. They have over 1,000 5-star reviews, and in one weekend last year, they sold over 7,000 bottles. There's a reason it's a hot-selling item. It works. They have many other items for your immune system needs. Go to RoweCasaOrganics.com and use the code BOOMCLAP to save 20% on your first order.
Anyway, okay, so let's talk about shifting a little more seriously. We were having the serious conversation and then it got a little funny, but you've been doing Bible reading plan with your audience on Instagram for a long time and also prayer challenges. And I love that because it's very easy for someone with your sort of platform. Again, beware of easy, right? but it's very easy for someone on Instagram with your platform to just have the fluff all the time. And we all love it. Like we all love fluffy stuff, but you intentionally don't. Like you intentionally bring attention to the power that's in scripture and the power that's in prayer. And you take people along with you on that. So I would love to hear why you started doing that and what kind of fruit you've seen come from it.
Well, first of all, I want to say I think that you paint me in too good of a light because a lot of it comes from selfish reasons of accountability for myself. I'm like,
that's not selfish.
if I do this smart. With a big community, it will hold me accountable. But no, a lot of it also does come because we have seen God's faithfulness so much throughout the years of him literally growing the account. And I just did a reel where it says, you know, if the Lord builds a house, what is the verse now? It will stand strong, basically, is the whole thing. But if he doesn't, it will crumble, you know? And to watch this Instagram account that we started, not even for any sort of monetary gains, and then what the Lord has turned it into. And I mean, yes, a business, but more so than that, like the accountability I feel to him for what he has given me has really driven me to keep my mindset on an eternal perspective. And so I think with these challenges and with the Bible reading plan, my whole goal is like, Lord, you've given me a platform. At the end of the day, am I going to hear, well done, you did what I wanted you to do with it? Or am I going to hear you say, well, you made a lot of money on that platform, but you didn't save any souls, you know? Right. And I think that is the driving force behind, because, you know, when you lose anyone, you know how quick this life is and things can change so instantly. So some of the loss that we've went through in our family has really opened my eyes up to, I need to be intentional because we don't know how long we have. And what we do on this earth matters only for eternity. So the Bible reading plan came about because I mean, I graduated with a Bible major from Northwestern College. And I mean, I technically had to read the Bible through in a year there in college, but you know how that goes. It wasn't really, it was just to check it off and not to really glean from it. And so I was sitting at, I don't know, I was 35 years old and I've never really read the whole Bible cover to cover. And I'm not a New Year's resolution kind of person, but that year, and this is, I think 7 years ago now, I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to read the Bible through cover to cover. And I just really wanted to do it chronologically because I wanted to know the whole story. Like I just thought, you know what, if I'm going to do it, this is how I'm going to do it. So I just found a plan and I printed it off and I was like, hey, if anyone wants to do this with me, and opened it up to the community. And there was an overwhelming response. And it was super exciting because it gave me the accountability to stick with it and to get into that new rhythm and that new pattern, because I knew I was doing it. And that's what the Lord says, like, surround yourself with like-minded people and encourage each other and sharpen each other. And I mean, it's for a reason. It's for a purpose, edify each other, because we need each other to cheer each other on, because it's a hard world. And so when I opened it up to the Instagram community, a lot of people jumped on board, and it started out very, like I said, selfishly for myself. And when I did it, it was such a life-changing thing for me to really, and for myself personally, what it did is it transformed my view of God. I was always fearful of God, and God and Jesus were very separate in my mind. And so reading the story chronologically really gave me a love for God, because I actually saw how loving and patient and merciful he was. It wasn't just, you know, the fear of, I will smite you, I will smite you. So it was so powerful. And then as people were sharing their testimonies about how it changed their lives, I just feel like the momentum grew and grew and grew. And I think we are on our 5th or 6th year now, 4th or 5th. I don't know. I'm not even sure, but we're almost halfway through this year. And I mean, I think we had a community of 10 to 12,000 people committed to reading the Bible through in a year. And there's always a free download on my website or Instagram page, because I am like, anyone that wants to do this can do this, and everyone should do it, because it is life-changing. And so, Cecily, that's where I can preach to everyone as much as possible, and it's one voice. But when I start sharing all these testimonies, when people start weighing in, then people kind of perk their ears and they're like, oh, wait, it changed their life. And then it changed their life. And this is what it spoke to them. And all of a sudden they don't want to be left out. They don't want to be left behind. They're like, what is this? I mean, I've had people who have never picked up a Bible a day in their life. And they're like, I'm going to commit to doing this. I've heard so much about it. I'm just going to see what this is all about. And it's so cool. I mean, the community, the power of community is amazing. So I know social media gets a bad rap for a lot of things, but there is some really cool, awesome aspects to it. And that is what it is. The people that feel alone or unseen or uninspired can really be a part of something, and it can be life-changing.
I mean, I affirm all of that so much. So I've never actually done the plan with you because I'm always kind of in the middle of the Bible or something when yours is picking up. And so, but I've used your plan actually, because then I would finish like when you guys were midway through and I'm like, oh, I'm going to use Allie's plan this time for the chronological reading. So I've read the Bible chronologically, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 times. And it's so helpful to me. And then somewhere in the middle of those years, I decided I'm going to take a year off from like reading the Bible in a year. I'm going to just read like Matthew, and then I might go read something else and I'll just kind of study. And I'm like, maybe I'll read more than the Bible in a year, or maybe I'll read less. Well, it ended up being less. And then, so like a couple months in, I was like, I need to have a plan. For me personally, I need to have a plan, something to keep me on track. And so I went back to chronologically for a couple of years. And then this year I decided I'm going to do one of the other plans that it like has, 2 Old Testament, 2 New Testament. And so I'm still doing it, but I'm considering stopping actually and going back to chronological just because the story for me makes way more sense. And even though I've read through the Bible numerous times, I'm like, okay, so now I'm reading in Nehemiah. I'm like, but what's the context here? I understand that you're trying to rebuild Jerusalem, but like what just happened, So I'm actually considering stopping where I am and just going back to chronological. And then maybe sprinkling in some New Testament on top of it, because that's what I really miss the New Testament when going
it goes through. So fast in the chronological plan. I agree. Yes.
Yeah. And so I might just do chronological and then sprinkle. That sounds so terrible. Sprinkle some New Testament on top every day. But there's something really, really powerful about reading through the biblical story chronologically. And it's so cool every time I see you share what people are saying about how it's changing them and what it's doing in their lives. And one last thing I want to touch on about what you said, and then we should talk about the prayer challenges, or unless Rita has something to say too, but you had said social media, it gets a bad rap. And it does. I give it a really bad rap. Like I've said to Rita multiple times recently, I'm like, I don't know if social media is redeemable. Like I have started to feel that it's completely irredeemable and that it's a major net negative rather than a net positive. But the last, I think, 3 episodes that we've recorded with guests, we had you, Ruth Ann Zimmerman, and Christian Watson of 1924 US are the last 3 guests that we've done. And each of you contributes to the social media world in such a positive way. And so we talked about social media in some context in every single one of those episodes. And I was like, okay, God, like, I don't know if you're telling me this or not, because you know that I hate social media so much. But, there's probably nothing that's completely irredeemable. I mean, I shouldn't say nothing because there's certain sin that is completely irredeemable, but social media doesn't have to mean sin. It does a lot of the time, unfortunately, and it's very easy to take it down that road. But I've been so blessed by you and the other 2 guests I mentioned, and so many more in like Andrew Pudawa. He does social media so differently than anyone I know, but he does it so well because he just shares what's on his heart and in his mind. And I would not have known any of you guys if not for that. So I'm feeling pretty convicted of that lately. And I've thought that in every single episode that we've recorded and haven't said it until today with you, because it's just building every time. I'm like, oh, wow. Truly. Yeah. Anyway, read it.
And I mean, that's the thing. I mean, it is probably not too much great on there, and people do get sucked into so much of the negative. And I think, again, that goes back to even what you guys were saying is like this platform that I've been given, and there is so much bad on it. So how can we use it to glorify God and to bring some light? My whole thing is shine bright. So bring light in the darkness. You know what I mean? So, and on top of that, of it being a business, I mean, I don't want to just say like, this is just a ministry, because it obviously provides for our family. And I'm very grateful for that. But trying to shine some light in that darkness, because it is a very dark place. Yeah.
Okay. So let's discuss the prayer challenges. You've done a couple of them that I know of for sure, maybe even more. So tell us, what was the first one? What started it? What's the last one that you just did, or anything in between? Fill us in.
Yeah. So it started with, so Ryan and I decided to host like an online marriage class.
Yes.
And it's very comical because in our small group, we'd always say this, like we are the ones that probably struggle the most with our marriage in our small group. Like it's been a rough road, but also one that we're both so committed to making better. So it's so funny, but we both had it really burdened on our heart to start a marriage course. And, we're like the most unlikely candidates, but also like, Lord, you can use that because maybe it's relatable. So we started that. And then I just had this passion and burden on my heart to just do a 30-day marriage course, because I actually, like when you see all the DMs coming in and you realize the attack on marriage and how many people were feeling so desperate in their marriage, I was like, wow, the enemy definitely has a stronghold in this area. So that kind of is what launched my very first prayer challenge, which was a 30-day marriage prayer challenge. And so off of that, I just got prayer prompts. And it's kind of like you said before, Cecily, like when you didn't have a guide to go off of with reading, you just kind of get off course, right? And it's prayer can be very much like that for me too. If I'm not intentional in it and I don't have something to launch off of, all of a sudden I'm thinking of 20 things, you know what I mean? And my mind is off of prayer. And so to create kind of a guide, and it was just on Instagram, but something to pray for specifically every day. And it would be a 2-minute prayer with people. But it would be 30 days of just intentionally praying for every single aspect of our marriage. And it was so powerful. I mean, when I tell you, like I had women come up to me just weeping, telling of the miracles God did in their life. And, humbly, I'm like coming into this, like, Lord, praying these huge miracles, but also like, please let me just see one, or, you know what I mean? Like still doubting, like, is he gonna move mountains? Yeah. And I have to tell you, regardless of what we're praying for, and this is what people don't understand, prayer doesn't always change our circumstances. Prayer changes us. And that is what the biggest heart change. And I mean, prayer can definitely change our circumstances, and God does do that. But 95% of the work done through prayer is done in our own hearts. And so after we did that marriage challenge, I realized that as I was like thinking, I'm going to pray for Ryan and I'm going to change him and I'm going to change this marriage, it was like, all of the prayers started being reflected back to me like, oh, Lord, help me do this. Lord, help me do that, And I was so much more patient in my marriage, and our marriage did change because guess who changed, And then that's just this beautiful cycle, because then it encourages them. And the Lord even says that in scripture, if you want to, have a lasting effect on, I mean, that's an unbelieving husband, but it's like by your own actions and by your own deeds, win them over, And so anyhow, so it was so received so well. And I realized how desperate people are. One, how desperate people are for prayer and just for circumstances in their life that they want someone to walk alongside them. And then two, how many people felt like they were not qualified to pray just broke my heart. Like, I don't know how to pray. I don't know where to start. I don't know what words to use. And so it actually turned into this, like, and I say all the time, you guys, the Lord hears your voice just as much as he hears mine. But to model what prayer looks like was very important for people to see that I can do this, and hopefully launch them off. So since that prayer challenge, we did a kids 30-day prayer challenge. And that one I actually turned into a book form. The marriage one I need to as well. And then just we just came off of a 30-day prayer challenge for our country, going off of 2 Chronicles 7:14. If you will humble yourselves and bow, I will hear your prayers and heal your land. And it was so powerful for myself because I have been so at peace this last 30 days in a very unpeaceful culture right before the election. And it really just did a number on my heart of, God is sovereign. He's in control. He's on the throne. Lord, have your way with our country. And to be honest, it was like, are we going to have judgment or are we going to have mercy? It could go either way, but prepare my heart for that. And it was so powerful to do with so many people because fear is the biggest tactic of the enemy. And we know that. And we know media runs with fear too. So just to tune into a different voice and to just let peace flow over people from the Lord and what he gives. It was so powerful to do that with a big group. So we just came off of that prayer challenge and it was pretty cool.
Pretty incredible.
Oh.
I love that you do that. Like really love it.
Yeah. When I watch you praying live on Instagram, I'm like, that also takes guts. Like that takes some courage. I don't know. Cause I think people worry, especially like people that go to church and hear their pastor pray. And it's like often these beautiful, like thought out prayers, and not that yours aren't, they are. I'm not saying that. It's not where I'm going. I'm just saying like, I think like a normal person being able to pray that is not a pastor, and show people what that looks like is really unique, because we don't see a lot of that, especially in the public forum like you are.
Yeah, I mean, it was, not to say it was always so easy, but it's gotten easier as it has gone on. And as people have said how important it is for them or how beneficial it's been. It's, it's one of those things where, and that's where we're like, I wish you would do this all the time. And I'm like, it is kind of an emotionally taxing thing to commit to this 30 days of even just showing up at every single day and putting yourself out there in that way. It's just a very, So I love to do it, but they're definitely, then I take a break and then we do another one as I feel led by the Lord. But yeah, it's not always easy, Rita. So that's for sure. And it's so funny because I don't even like to do it when my kids or husband, Ryan's like, do you want me to go in a different room? I'm like posting it to all of these people on Instagram, but I'm like, yes, could you please, as I'm praying into my phone, because it does feel unnatural. I mean, I'm grateful people think it seems natural, but as I'm praying into my phone, it does feel a little unnatural. So
I can only imagine like praying into your phone, like seeming unnatural and wanting people to leave. Like I can't even, this is one reason, like since I've started homeschooling, that I don't story as much, like video story as much, because I always did it when nobody was home because I don't want people watching me talk. And also like my kids just watching me talk into my phone. I don't know. There's something about that just in general, but also like watching me talk. Like it feels awkward. So I can't imagine praying into my phone.
So natural. And I'm like that, and I'm like, no, even influencers, who have millions of followers, it's never not awkward when you're in a store talking to your phone. Right. Like it seems natural, but it's not.
Is there something about like, this is totally off track, but kind of there. So there's something about sharing things with a large group of people on social media that seems like there's a distance between versus sharing personal things like in real life or even on Facebook. Like I say my Facebook now is for my friends. Like I've stopped friending a bunch of people on Instagram because I just want to like keep that for kind of seeing things that are going on in the world. And so sometimes like I'm more apt to share something on Instagram than I am on my Facebook, even though my following is much larger, because somehow it feels like there's distance there. Is this so strange?
No, 100% agree. And some of my friends will even be like, if I'm not on Instagram, I don't know what's going on with you. And I'm like, well, some of it is convenience and some of it is that. It's like,
there's like an anonymity in the group somehow.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah. I've had those moments where, and I have a very tiny following compared to both of you, but I've had those moments where I would go to post something in my stories on Instagram. And then I'd be like, well, maybe I'll just hide it from like this list of people because they know me personally and I don't really want them to see this. But then I just am not one of those people that can split. I'm like, no, if I feel that it's something that should be posted, then I have to be willing to post it in front of literally everyone. Like there's no compromise within me for these sorts of things, you know? And so it's sometimes stopped me from putting things, and sometimes putting things that make me super uncomfortable, not because of the people that will see it that I don't know, but because of the people that will see it that I do know. So
like really, it's not even the people that'll see it, because the same people on Facebook follow me on Instagram in a lot of cases. It's just like
there's a few extra people that you know.
Cushion number makes me forget. I don't know.
The cushion.
Well, it's so weird. It's like if I went to church without makeup on, I'd be mortified. And I'm like, I just literally went completely makeup free for all these people that follow me, and I didn't think twice about it. I'd be mortified if someone ran into me. Like, the disconnect there.
It's
weird.
It is weird. Yeah.
Anyway, that's something to ponder. I find that really fascinating.
It is. Well, and I mean, I think that's where it's just like, it's maybe dangerous too, that with the kids, because you feel like it's a different world or something. Right. There's something there. Yeah, for sure.
And we have fully developed frontal lobes, whereas kids don't, right? So it's just can handle these things a little bit easier. But it's interesting. Anyway, Rita, is there anything else that you wanted to talk about, or Allie?
I'm just distracted looking out the window. I can see my 19-month-old like trying to pull his wagon and yelling, and he's so cute. He's like, like I can't get it. He's waiting on somebody to come help. Sorry.
Adorable.
I don't know. There's so much else we could talk about.
There is.
Is there anything else you wanted to ask? Because I might bring something else up if not.
Who, me?
Yeah.
No, I'm looking at my list, and I've pretty much hit everything, but.
Okay, this is also random, but much earlier in the conversation, we were talking about social media and friends and like having friend relationships. You mentioned, Cecily, something about like, you know, your friends have moved away and things like that. And this is something that's been on my mind, and I think we have talked about it, but Allie, we have not talked about it, and we haven't talked about it on a podcast. So maybe like this is a good group of people to bring it up with. But just like, I don't know about your families, but I grew up where all of my extended family lived very close. Like I grew up in northern Indiana. All my grandparents lived in the same town on both sides of the family. My aunts and uncles, everybody lived in the same town. And then my generation, like grandkids, people have moved away for jobs or because we went to college and met our spouse there. And I think that college has really drove a lot of that, because like you're going away to a school and a bunch of people are there from all different areas, and a lot of people are meeting their spouses there, but also the way we work and things have changed, and a lot of people are going to city locations to find jobs rather than staying locally. But I don't know that I can say it's all bad, but I don't know that it's good either. And I don't know that's the way things were designed to be. So I just wonder if anybody else has thoughts to throw out there, because I have a lot of them, and it's something I've really been wanting to discuss.
Yeah, that's so interesting, because as we're like building all these little areas on our property, I'm like, hey, one of my kids could stay here, one could stay here. And it's like, keep all my babies close. And that used to be looked on as like you were trying to keep a tight leash. You need to let them fly. And yeah, Rita, I've totally thought about that, because I'm like, do we need to try and push them into like, I mean, it's like, you don't want to, if they're obviously passionate about something.
Yeah, don't like cling on to them, but also don't push it.
Exactly. And it's like, and this mentality of they need to go away to find who they are, you know, like, do they? No, I'm with you. And you're right. Like so many times, and maybe it's because I'm always in the Bible in the mornings, but I'm like, in Bible times, like you said, this is totally not how the Lord created the nuclear family, you know, because everyone still stayed with real close, you know, and is that bad? And even with the young marriage, I'm like, they got married young, like they didn't go out and find themselves and get settled before they got married. But I mean, as culture evolves, I know so do we, but no, coming back to some of that, because I'm like, as culture has gone on a 250 mile per hour speed course, it's like, let's bring it back.
Yeah. I can't tell you
some of that. We read Pride and Prejudice this year. And then we also just went and toured like this mansion in Duluth with these families.
I loved that. I want to go there.
So cool. But as
That's
we were
really
going through
cool.
this huge mansion, they built this house to keep their kids there as long as possible. And a lot of them were still adults when they lived there. And I'm like, it's not been that entirely long.
Yes.
Of a time frame where it's been like, push your kids out and let them go experience the world. So it was kind of interesting when we toured that. I was like, yeah, they really had the mindset of creating enough space to keep family here for as long as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I missed that in your stories, but I'm interested now.
It was so cool. You'd love it, Rita. It was this cool old mansion. I was like, man, I want to go there right now and tour around there. It's just like, I love those things. But I can't tell you guys how many times my husband and I have been like, well, we could maybe have like, we could sneak a tiny home onto the property somewhere, one or two, and like trying to figure out like how, I mean, it breaks my heart to think of not being able to live near my kids. And there's a lot that goes into that, right? Like, just even the cost of real estate. And it's hard to imagine how they could ever, unless they move away somewhere. And I'm like, should we move ahead of time to somewhere that's more affordable so that they can find who they're going to marry, like in this new place where we all are? Like, these are thoughts that have actually gone through my head. Not that I've planned to follow through on it or anything, but I don't know. There's just, family is important for a reason. And I don't know, like you said, it's a fairly new thing that people are leaving their families, quote, early, just like the education system is a fairly new thing. Like, and the people's ability to travel all over the place is also a fairly new thing. But it's just interesting how quickly we adopt these things as normal. Like you said, culture evolves quickly. But the thing is, and of course, I'm not in control of culture, so I can't stop this from happening. But these are things that shouldn't evolve without our permission in a way. But I guess the majority is giving that permission for this evolution to take place, you know?
Yeah.
And we're just letting it go.
And that's where it kind of comes back to that very first reel of, hey, we can create whatever culture we want in our families.
Yeah.
And if we provide these opportunities where, guess what? We are willing to work to finance alongside of you a property near us, or something like, I mean, if the kids aren't on board, but if they're on board and they are excited about it, I mean, I am all for going against culture and looking like the weird ones.
Amen 100%. To that.
I mean, we already do, and creating a different culture. I mean, that's what we did a whole course on, creating the culture you want, not the one that you're expected to just oblige to, So I think that's a great conversation.
That is another thing that's gotten brought up in 3 recent episodes we've recorded now, is creating culture, because we always talk about being countercultural and things, but I think subconsciously we might know, but we don't really draw that out often, that we're actually capable of creating the culture we want and influencing culture as a whole by the culture we actually create within our homes and that we take out into the world. So very good. Yep.
Yeah. And it all intertwines, all of it. Marriage, social media, babies, homeschooling, all of it.
It really does.
Conversation.
Well, and it's because, and the reason it intertwines is because of where our hope is found and what we've built our lives on, right? And I don't know, like we've had conversations leading up to the election. Guys, we're recording today and it's November 7, if you're wondering why we talk about it. But we've had conversations leading up to the election that were like, if people don't, have a firm sense of what they believe and why, like a moral foundation to like build their lives upon, everything feels disconnected. Everything feels like its own individual decision. And a choice for this and a choice for that. And yes, sort of. But I think what makes it interwoven for the 3 of us as we're sitting here having this conversation, and hopefully for everyone who's listening as well, is that all of this is tied to that moral foundation, to that biblical worldview. And there's just so much peace that comes with that. And I'm thankful for that. And it's why I'm thankful for what you do on Instagram and with your whole business and your ministry, that it really is creating culture too. Like Rita said, it's a one way of creating culture and just giving people a glimpse into what anchors you. and letting them kind of see what it can do for them.
Yeah. And, we get a little kickback of putting our kids on social media and whatnot. And that's what I just said. I just feel so strongly that I want to give a window to a different way for people and for them to see that it's possible. And not only is it possible, but it's beneficial and it's rewarding. And so for that reason is why we do share as much as we share and why we share our kids. And that social media reel that went viral, you had the haters of, oh my gosh, you're not giving your kids the experience. But then you also had the haters of you're exposing your kids, you know, and I just said the reality is if people don't see with their own eyes that it's possible and they don't see kids that are full of joy without these devices, it's not nearly as impactful. Like it's like words without actions. You've got to see the actions to buy the product. And so that is our whole idea behind our page that I didn't even realize, but it's just been to give a glimpse of you can create the culture you want in your own four walls and it's worth it. So
absolutely. That's so good. Rita, anything else before we wrap it up?
No, now I want to talk about kids on social media, but we're going to wrap up. I'll stop myself.
We're going to wrap up.
We're going to have someone else on for that one.
Oh, man.
The one thing I will say about that is that when you were saying that, Allie, it really made me think like people draw these hard lines in the sand of like kids can't be on social media or it's totally fine. Or they'll draw a hard line on something like kids shouldn't go to public school or kids shouldn't be homeschooled. And these hard lines get drawn, but it's like, we really need the freedom to do what God has called each of us to, because he has a different role for each person and family to fulfill in the Great Commission and how that's executed, right? And for some people that might look like homeschool, for some people that might look like having your kids on Instagram, for some people that might look like public school in a really intentional way, And so I really like that you said that because it just is a reminder to people that don't judge just because someone's doing something differently than you, because someone can do something differently. And if it's done intentionally and with the right motives, I mean, I'm sure the fruit will bear out and be the evidence for that. And so I guess that's one thing that I'll say on kids on social media. And it's not even really about kids on social media, just don't judge because you don't know how God's using that. And if it's clearly sin, that's a different thing, right?
Yes.
But if it's
There's got to be fruit, right? There's got to be fruit, but absolutely. And that's where I know two of my best friends, I homeschool, one public schools, and one is in a Christian private school. And we always say there's not one size fits all. And it's so good to just have that perspective of everyone is, on their journey where the Lord has them. So it's true.
Exactly. Okay. All right. I'll zip it now. Allie, thank you so much for joining us. It's always such a good conversation with you. But yeah, one day in person, this would be fantastic. We'll have to make that happen someday. But thank you all for listening. We need to have Allie just remind everyone where they can find you on Instagram, your website, what you offer. We talked about it a little bit, but I think you have so many good things that you have available for people that you should tell us about.
Yeah, www.proverbs31girl.com is my website, blog, and store. And it's where I have some of the prayer challenges, some jewelry lines, and just a lot of encouragement there. As well as, of course, we made a course called Creating Culture that really is being intentional on making that culture in your house. So you can find that there. And on Instagram, I'm just at Proverbs31girl. So tune in, always showing up every day for stories.
Yeah, honestly, that's an amazing thing all on its own. That takes energy. So props to you for that. But she really is a great follow, you guys. So make sure you do that. I know you all enjoyed this episode. We have so much more coming up in January and February and beyond. Just great interviews with great guests, great conversations that we're looking forward to sharing with you. So if you haven't yet, please do leave us a rating, review, subscribe, follow. All of those things are super helpful for us and we really appreciate it. We can't honestly do it without your support. So please go ahead and do that. And if you want to find us outside of the podcast, you can find us on Instagram at BOOMCLAP Podcast, or individually, I'm on Instagram at Cecily.Dickey, or my website, thegracetogrow.com.
You can find me at RitaRogersCo.com or Rita Rogers Co on Instagram. Thanks for listening.